I want to touch a little bit on Anita Sarkeesian because Neil Druckmann, the creator of The Last of Us 2, says he got a lot of inspiration from her. And one of the most disingenuous pieces of criticism that Anita Sarkeesian had was talking about the game called Hitman Absolution, a game where you play a hitman and you're encouraged to only interact with your target and leave bystanders alone. But Anita Sarkeesian went into a level where you have some NPCs that are hookers. And the whole purpose of that was to have the NPCs talk about how difficult life as a sex worker is. But what she does is she actually assaults the hookers and then claims that the game promotes the player in order to treat these women as objects and dump them into dumpsters and treat them like pieces of meat, completely dehumanizing them. Her argument was that if video games are allowing this imagery to be shown, then the players will become sexist in real life and possibly reproduce the same images that they've seen in video games. It's very interesting that in The Last of Us 2, an overwhelming number of enemies that you face are black women. And the game actually does, in this case, encourage you to fight them. And you get to do very violent and graphical things like bring a crowbar to their head, or even worse, use the character that you play as Abby in order to choke these women. And it's very interesting how the gaming press does not attack or point out this criticism. They celebrate Anita Sarkeesian, they really acknowledge her contributions in helping gaming grow, but for some reason, they do not choose to attack The Last of Us for the same criticism which Anita brought to Hitman Absolution. And I think the reason was that they never wanted gaming to grow. They never wanted anything else but to get their friends in positions of high places, to get the people they know from California to be the leaders of the industry. They created a clique where they got people like Amy Hennig fired in order to replace her with their friends, Neil Druckmann. And they will never criticize their friends. It's getting so ridiculous to the point where one of the Polygon writers had some criticism for The Last of Us 2 in his review. And because it wasn't a perfect 10 out of 10, a member from the company of Naughty Dog contacted the journalist to ask him, hey, what gives? Why isn't this a perfect 10 out of 10? Because the game is made for the journalists. They are the targeted audience. It's not the gamer. In fact, I would to argue that the story itself is meant to spite the gamer, to anger the gamer, because the relationship between the gamer and the gaming press is not a good one nowadays. And the gaming press despises the gamer and the feeling seems to be mutual. So when a game is meant to antagonize the gamer, to be a story that they know will piss off the gamer, then the gaming press loves it. And they start giving 10 out of 10 and ignore all the criticism. And this is why I think companies virtue signal. Because the same thing that we saw in Hitman Absolution, that Anita Sarkeesian was complaining, is the same thing that we see in The Last of Us, but on steroids. And you see no complaint from the gaming press, no complaint for Anita Sarkeesian, none whatsoever. Why? Because they virtue signal, they play on the same team. Amy Hennig, despite being a woman, she didn't play on the same team, and that's why she had to go. So it's going to be really difficult to review this game objectively. And I want to do that. And I know it's going to piss off a lot of people because right now a lot of people want to hate this game. And there are many reasons to hate this game. All of them are valid. The press will say, well, the only reason people hate this game is because of LGBT representation, which is absolutely false considering that Mass Effect had LGBT representations and even The Last of Us 1 had it and people weren't complaining. But if you were to take this to the logical conclusion, if you say that the only reason people hate the game is because of LGBT representation, then the opposite must be true, that the mainstream media, the only reason they gave this game a 10 out of 10 is because of LGBT representation. In other words, you can make a broken game, you can make something that's not even playable, But as long as it has LGBT representation, the mainstream media will not only love it, but will attack people who criticize it. Another reason the mainstream media tries to make it unacceptable to not like the game is because of the woke politics. The politics of the developers, the things they say on Twitter. And I don't understand when is it a problem to punish a company for their political leanings. I mean, they have no problem writing articles against Steam because Steam didn't choose to pander and put a BLM logo, or they don't seem to have a problem when people are attacking Chick-fil-A because of the politics of the person in charge and not because of the quality of the sandwiches. So I find it really hypocritical for the mainstream media to all of a sudden say, well, cancel culture is bad when you do it against our friends, but they encourage cancel culture against people they don't like all the time. So please shut the fuck up with your concern trolling. But let's actually look at the game objectively, and I'm going to do my best to be as objective as possible. I have finished playing the game. I have live streams updated where you can see me play through it, and I will tell you my honest to God opinion whether this game is good or bad, and I will ignore all of the woke issues, all of the progressive issues. I'm just going to look at it like I'm a Martian that came on Earth, and this is the first game that I ever played. And I want to start with the good, because there is some good in the game. I don't think the game is a 3.4. I think what is happening is because the game journalists gave the game a 10 out of 10 constantly and slandered people who didn't like it. Then people gave it a really low score out of spite. And it's like, well, it's not a 10 out of 10, but it's not a 3.4, right? So people are feeling annoyed and aggravated because you're calling them racist and sexist and all that. So they're just going out and using the voice of the unheard, which is review bombing. And by the way, like, I don't understand when review bombing is a bad thing. Like, again, they do this to Chick-fil-A all the time. Like, they have no problems canceling indie games or attacking indie developers who are pushing games that are not politically correct. But when you do it to a AAA game, all of a sudden it's a problem. You know, all these leftists pretending to be socialists, they're really out there to defend multi-million-dollar corporations. But anyway, let's start with the good things. So the environment in this game is breathtaking. I mean, there are some levels and you get to see some really beautiful colors, and the way you get to see the sunlight from the trees, or when you get to see the village of the scars in flames, like, those are some really good epic moments. You can see that a lot of passionate artists were working really hard in order to make the environments as breathtaking as possible. And I think for the most part they succeeded. This is by far one of the most beautiful games that I have played in the entire year. And it goes to show because they're using the latest graphics and they're using the latest technology. And that is like one great aspect of the game. Another thing that I liked was the character of Tommy. Tommy is a really nice badass, ignoring the man bun. Throughout the game, he was the only character that was left untouched. I love that in the beginning, he pretends that he's not going to avenge his brother, and he pretends that he's going to talk with Ellie tomorrow, and then they find out that he actually left in order to avenge his brother and didn't want to bring Ellie because he knows how much Joel cared about Ellie, and he knows that if he were to get her involved and get her hurt, Joel wouldn't like that. So it's really nice, and showing the brutality that he is capable of is really interesting because it's hinted in The Last of Us 1 that both Joel and his brother Tommy had a really rough life, and they weren't good people. So you get to see like this really nice individual that likes to live be your like next door neighbor or whatnot, go out, torture people to get information, snipe people, like just one guy destroying entire battalions of unorganized wolf soldiers, I guess. That was really great. I really enjoyed that. Another thing, it's kind of hard to think about it, the gameplay. Now, the gameplay is very similar to The Last of Us 1. So if you like The Last of Us 1 and, from the gameplay perspective of just crouching and hiding and moving around and trying to avoid enemies and trying to take them out, then you're going to enjoy the gameplay of The Last of Us 2. Like, my advice is to mute the game, skip all the cutscenes, and just, focus on the gameplay. It's like you're playing a rip from the 90s, and you're probably going to have some fun. Because the AI seems to be really intelligent. I like the fact that the AI always tries to flank you. They don't use much of that trope that you see in a lot of games where you use cover, and at one point an AI will throw a grenade, and you have to run out of cover. Yeah, they got rid of that. So I did enjoy seeing the enemies try to actually use flanking maneuvers in order to get to you. The bullets have stopping power. This is, I think, the first time I get to see it in a game. If you want to rush at an enemy, if you just charge at him, and even if he has like a normal pistola, when he shoots you, it actually pushes you back. It actually makes it so you can't just blindly charge at an enemy. I think the stopping power made it really great and added an extra level of difficulty. The fact that you get to play two characters, I think, is also adding to fixing a problem that a lot of these games have. So, for example, when you play Tomb Raider, you get a weapon upgrade menu, and you also get a menu where you can upgrade your skills. So you can run faster, you can breathe underwater more. But the problem is, as you're getting close to the end of the game, you've upgraded almost everything, and it becomes kind of boring. Well, here, as you play with Ellie and you upgrade everything, you reach the middle of the game, and then you play with another character, and all the upgrades are, again, back at zero, and most of the upgrades and the weapon upgrades, as well as the physical upgrades, are quite different than those of Ellie. So that was like really nice. I would like to see this implemented in other games. And finally, I like the concept. I mean, the idea that you get to play with one character, you get the story point of view of that character, and you get to kill a lot of people, and then you get to the other point of view of the story, and you're playing the other character to see how they react when they find out that you killed those people. That concept in itself is not bad. Like, I would like to actually see it properly executed in another game, but, it didn't capture, like, when you play with Arthas, in Warcraft 3, and you're the villain and you're massacring all those humans, like, I get what they're going with, like, allowing you to play as the villain, but it's so poorly executed here, and it's so badly done, that I can see the concept, but the execution just destroys everything. Okay, so that's like the good aspects of the game. That's what I liked about the game. I honestly like these things. There's also like a couple of scenes in the game that, if the entire game was like that, I would have actually say it's a 10 out of 10. For example, when you fight with that massive zombie in the hospital, like, that was really cool. When you're fighting against Tommy and he's got like his sniper rifle and he fires at you, that was really cool. So, like, there are a couple of things that are wow and they're amazing, but there's so few in between that, the rest of the game is so cringe. And this is what we're going to talk about now. The bad things of the game, which are so many that I don't know if I'll manage to finish this video in 20 minutes. So the first thing is, like, all the characters are made ugly on purpose. Like, this is not something that happened. Like, this is an actual developer decision. Like, if you decide to make characters ugly on purpose so that teenage boys don't like it, well, guess what? Teenage boys won't like it, and I won't like it either. I mean, the women who modeled these characters are far better looking. The developers went out of their way to make beautiful environments, to have like beautiful art style in the background, and also went out of their way in order to make these characters, I can't even say like sexually unappealing. It's not that, but they look like men rather than women, if you know what I mean. Like, that's what they understand by desexualizing a character. And it pulls you out of it. Like, I go out and I see real women on the street, okay? And then I play this game, and the difference is so big, is so large that it just pulls me out of it, and I understand why they did it. It's like, oh, political reasons. It's like, oh, they just don't want me to have that enjoyment because of reasons. And it's weird. It's like, why you, if you as a developer like just happen to cast a couple of female characters that you want to make it look realistic and whatnot, like that's fine. But they went out of their way in the opposite direction and made absolutely sure that every single woman in the game is as unappealing, as unattractive as possible. And the second thing is, like, I'm starting to believe that these people do not interact with women, do not have kids, because the dialogue between the characters and the dialogue between, especially like when you have like two women talking with each other, they sound like teenage boys. They nonstop, they curse a lot. They use the most cringe jokes imaginable, to the point it's like, well, this is how I was acting when I was like 12 or 13, and when I would go next to another girl and speak like that, she would just want to go away, because she'd be like, why are you cursing so bad? Why do you have such a vile mouth? You're a vile person. That's pretty much what we're seeing here. Like, the dialogue is so cringe, like from bigot sandwiches, all the way to which is the most quiet animal on a farm, a sheep. Like, you see these things. Or, like when the girls find some marijuana and they start smoking it, and they're acting like it's such an edgy thing to do, when they forget that this is the apocalypse and smoking marijuana, no one gives a shit anymore. Like, they were safe, they were underground, nothing could have happened to them, and they're acting like it's a very edgy thing. And basically, the main issue is that there is no chemistry between the characters. It's very difficult for me to care about a character when there is no chemistry between them. If you want to see some good chemistry, look at the relationship between Shepard and Tali Zora in Mass Effect. Like, you don't even get to see Tali Zora's face. You don't even know how she looks like. And yet, because of the dialogue and the interactions and the things she's saying and talking to Shepard, you get to actually feel a lot of things. Like, if Tali Zora would have died in Mass Effect, I swear to God, I would have cried more than if Mufasa died in Lion King. Those were good writing, and this is bad writing. Like, this is people who I assume have, like, no idea about how women behave, and especially how teenage girls behave, and they're just projecting their personal experience onto these characters. And then you move on to the fact that this is a propaganda piece rather than an art piece. And I'll tell you the main difference between propaganda and art. Art, imagine a painting done by a Picasso, right? And you're looking at the painting and you're free to interpret whatever you want. Like, there is no correct way of interpreting it. It's all in your mind. Like, you can make up your own decisions. And a great example of this would be Zootopia. Now, Zootopia was about a society between carnivores and herbivores, and how they were trying to live together and, get past their primal natures, I guess. And then there's like this thing where the carnivores are attacking the herbivores, and there's like a mystery, and you find out that actually a sheep was the mastermind. And people who are right-wing would go to that, and they would have like their own interpretation of the movie and justifying their beliefs. And then you have like left-leaning people going there and having their beliefs justified. A propaganda piece makes absolutely sure that you do not assume anything. Like, it spoon feeds you the information, and it constantly repeats it over and over and over again, making absolutely sure that you get the message. And this is where you play as Ellie, and she constantly talks about everything you see in the environment, projecting her opinions onto you as the player. So, for example, when you reach a wall that says fuck Fedra, which is basically like fuck the military, she immediately calls them fascist, if I remember correctly. Like, she has like a negative view on the military, and it wants you, the player, to assimilate that view. And because it's a propaganda piece, it has like a clear window in the vision of a leftist, like how the perfect leftist utopia of Neil Druckmann would be like. And one of the things that I found very interesting is that in the beginning of the game, Ellie kisses a girl. And one of the members of that community, a white guy, of course, calls her the bad word. Now, we don't know what the bad word is, but I assume it's dyke. But suffice to say, because he did that, Joel uses violence against him. He knocks him out unconscious. He punches him, and the guy falls unconscious. And the community, instead of intervening and saying, hey, what are you doing? Like, yeah, sure, he was an asshole, but you could have just asked him to leave. You didn't have to punch him, and punish Joel for it. No. They decide to force the guy who got punched to apologize. Like, it wasn't enough that he was knocked out cold. He had to apologize. And the guy actually apologizes. He brings some sandwiches to Ellie and is sorry for it. And Ellie calls him, Ellie just doesn't want to accept the apology and calls them bigot sandwiches. Now, later in the game, we find out that she goes to this wall with Fuck Fedra, and she basically says how she doesn't like Fedra because they were fascists, because if someone were to use this graffiti where she grew up in, the soldiers would beat them up. And I'm thinking like, well, Ellie, how are you different than these people? Like, you do not disagree with the fact that for some words people deserve to be beaten up. You just disagree with the type of words. Like, you're just a changer in management. You just disagree with that ideology, but you do think that it's okay for people to get beaten up. And this is like leftist utopia, It's not that they want to rescue people from being able to express themselves and say whatever they want. No. It's just like, the things that the people aren't allowed to say, no, that's the problem. It's just, should be other things that people aren't allowed to say. It's very difficult to find it on principle that they would be for free speech. It's just like, they're okay with censorship. They just want to censor other things. And then when you finish the game, you find something also that's interesting. So Ellie, which killed a lot of people and wouldn't forgive someone for calling her a dyke, is willing to forgive the person that killed her father figure. How does that make sense? So she killed so many people. She doesn't seem to be the forgiving type, but all of a sudden, at the end of the game, she forgives Abby, who is the person that not only killed her father, but did it in a slow, sadistic, painful manner. A prolonged, painful manner. And it's just like very, very difficult to emphasize. Like, these are not characters, they're props. They are where they need to be. A lot of things that happens in this game happens purely on convenience. Like, for example, when Ellie goes to assassinate her last two targets, she conveniently drops the map there, and Abby manages to track her down based on the map that she dropped. Or there's another scene where they're riding on a horse, and conveniently the horse steps on a landmine that was just placed there for no reason. This is the hallmark of bad writing, when you can't find the justification why the characters would do something, so you just lazily create something out of convenience, something that, oh look, it just happened. And so the characters are, in my opinion, definitely not relatable. Because the dialogue is cringe, I can't care about them at all. I just want them to be quiet so I can play the game. And now let's go over to the cutscenes. 11 hours of cutscenes in a game. That's a lot. That's quite a bit. Now you can skip them if you want, which is what I encourage people to do. But it does feel more like a movie than a game at times, especially when you start playing with Ellie and then you start playing with Abby. Like, there's so much cutscenes. I remember 1 hour and 10 minutes, I think, in the beginning, just cutscene after cutscene after cutscene. They should have spread the cutscenes apart. It's like people want to get invested and play a little bit of the game rather than just watch cutscene after cutscene. And finally is the game journalist mode that really pissed me off. There's an autosave feature that you can't remove. So if you're in a combat with, let's say, 15 enemies, that should be a very difficult combat encounter. that should be very challenging, but also incredibly rewarding when you finally get to do it. But what this game does is it auto-saves constantly. So after you kill, let's say 5 people, you find out that it auto-saves. And then, no matter how bad you are, as long as you can just keep pushing on a little bit, you're going to finish the encounter. And it robs you of the sense of accomplishment. It robs you of that sense of danger and rewarding. I mean, there were times when I would be just like, oh, well, you know, fuck it. I'll just risk it and dash towards the enemy. And if I manage to take them out, good. If not, I get the autosave. And I don't like this at all. And there's no way to disable the autosave feature. It's what I think makes the game the worst from a gameplay perspective, story aside. Like, gameplay perspective, the autosave feature was like the worst cancer. I don't mind if it's there for some people who want it, but like, why are you forcing it on everyone else? I don't need it. I can finish the game without it. I finished The Last of Us 1 on survival mode, and I didn't need this crap. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, story-wise, unremarkable. The concept was great, you know, to have like these two characters that are fighting each other. I personally wouldn't have killed Joel. Like, again, like, killing these characters is done poorly, in my opinion. It's like, it's also the way he dies that's a problem. Like, Joel was this really cynical guy who wouldn't trust strangers no matter what. And all of a sudden, he just gives his name and trusts people and tells them about his community and whatnot. And it's like, okay, that's not the character. I would have done it better. Like, you could have had some misunderstanding. And maybe Abby kills Tommy instead of Joel. And then you actually play Ellie and you have to go and find Tommy's killer. And Joel is, you know, now the guy that's sniping and doing all this cool shit in the background. Like, that would have been a lot more cooler, I think. And the execution would have been a lot better. Because, like, why... If you want to kill Joel, like, that's fine. You can kill Joel. But, like, do it in a way that's heroic. You know, like, maybe someone tries to kill Ellie and he just jumps in the way. Or something like that. The way it was done, it was just for shock value. You know, to subvert your expectations type of shit. That's not great storytelling. That's just knowing that you're doing something to piss people off. That's it. Oh, and the transgender kid. Yeah, I forgot about the transgender kid. Like, I find it so funny. Because this is another part of leftist morality. First of all, like, the transgender kid constantly tone polices you. So you're fighting this enemy that are religious zealots. And they're called the Seraphites. But the wolves call them scars as a mockery because they have like these scars on their face. So the transgender kid, as you're butchering his community, is absolutely okay with you doing that. But the moment you call them scars, he goes like, no, they're Seraphites. Like, no. Like, dude, you're just butchering them violently, and the thing that you're worried and concerned about is like the way that you use mean words to talk about them, even when they're not in the presence of you. How the fuck does that work? And then the game goes like way out of its way never to misgender the trans kid. It's like, because I find it funny. Like, I said it. Like, I actually said it. It's like, there is no way this kid is going to be misgendered. Why? Because it's a progressive game. And every time, like, for example, when Isaac, the leader of the wolves, wants to kill the kid, he still wouldn't misgender it. It's like, he goes like, get away from that scar. Get away from that kid. And he literally has a gun pointed at him like he's about to execute that kid if Abby were to move. But he doesn't do it, like, he doesn't misgender. Like, he's very careful with his language here. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know, like, that. It breaks immersion. That's what it does. It breaks immersion. Like, normally, you need to have, like, a set of standards. Like, I'm willing to assume that when you point a gun at someone, it's far worse than if you were to misgender. Like, my life, I would rather be misgendered than shot, you know? Like, but that's just me. But, you know, like, this is leftist mentality now. These are left-leaning values. You should have them, because otherwise you might get fired one day. But anyway. Yeah, whether this game was enjoyable or not. Man, like, I can't say it's a 10 out of 10. I'm sorry, like, it's not enjoyable anywhere near how much I enjoyed playing The Witcher or God of War or even Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's not boring either. I mean, if I didn't have anything else better to do, I would have probably played this. It's mediocre. That's what it is. It's mediocre. It's not meh. But because of the politics surrounding it, and because of the way Neil Druckmann behaves towards the fans and the opinions they have on gamers, I would rather not buy it. It's like, why would I pay their bigotry with my cash? They should found their own bigotry. If you hate gamers and you're such a raging bigot and you want to please game journalists, let them buy your shit. I personally am not going to invest in that. Maybe if it was like a really great game, I would have changed my mind. Like if this was like God of War 4 and was like really well done and very nice and with interesting dialogue and rich characters, then yeah, I would be like, you know what, like, okay, fine. Maybe I'll pay for a little bigotry. But like when you're such a raging bigot and you have like these very problematic depictions with Abby strangulating black women in your game, then no, I think I would pass. The only reason I bought it is because I'm streaming and other people, get to see it and give me chance to give an honest opinion, and you can see if it's your type of game or not. But all in all, no, absolutely not. I mean, there's far better games. Like if this was on discount, maybe. But if it wasn't for me streaming it, I would have never bought it and then never bothered with it. So anyway, right, this is my opinion. I guess like a 5, maybe 5.5 towards a 6. That's it. No, it's not a game you must have in your collection. Definitely not. Last of Us 1, yes, Last of Us 1 was a great game. Last of Us 2, not so much. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.